It's got the factory dipstick. Wow. Let's put that back on. Pretend like we never seen that. Hey everybody, I just wanted to cover the cooling system on this car for the gbody that I'm working on, 86 Grand Prix. If you haven't seen it in any of the other videos, how to LS swap one, which I'm not actually putting an LS engine in it. It is the LM7 5.3 from a 99 Silverado. So I was getting the wiring taken care of, and it's starting to look pretty good. I'm not going to cover the wiring for the cooling fans in this video. I will have a separate video for that. So there I'm using the factory 99 Silverado fuse block. Don't have any of my wiring covered up yet because I'm not done. The LT1 radiator and fans is what I am running on this car. I run the LT1 radiator because supposedly it is thicker than the LS1 radiator. But the F-body fans work great. It's a dual fan setup, and they mount into the radiator just like that. So they fit in pretty well. The upper radiator hose, which I'm sure there's better ones out there, but I'm using a factory truck upper radiator hose, and then the bottom one was just a spare hose I had laying around. I don't know, I think I robbed it maybe off of a older small block Chevy, but anyways, it works. Running the factory thermostat. These heater hose lines, I used to just plug them off, and the more I read about it, people were saying don't plug them, loop them. So I will find a hose to loop these two. There's something to do with the coolant passageway there and getting the air out of it, and I don't know, it's a weird deal. Some people were having problems with them heating up or overheating maybe. I never had a problem with them plugged off, but that's not to say there wasn't a problem occurring. Alright, so the radiator is obviously too tall to fit underneath of this this core support. So what I ended up doing was I found the factory rubber radiator pads that the radiator sits on, and just drilled new holes at the bottom and moved them to fit this radiator. There's a stud on one side of this radiator, and all it is to line it up in the F-body cars. So don't try to break it off, you'll break the bottom of the radiator. So just drill a bigger hole for that stud to go into, and you'll see it. I think I even took the radiator off, but it's kind of a pain to move. The top of the radiator, I did not do this correctly, but you can see that I just found a couple pieces of scrap. I actually took a hacksaw and, man, I want this thing to focus. Alright, took a hacksaw, cut the top of this aluminum rib here down, folded it over, sheet metal screwed that to this, and that was how I did that on both sides. I never had a problem with it all last year, so it worked out. The cap, I have a 4-pound cap in it, just a regular old cap, and there was no real reason for that. I just happened to have the cap. I don't know where it come from. That's what I had laying around. The low coolant sensor in the F-bodies, the V6 cars, 99 V6 car, I have one out back, and it does not have that. It's just blocked off. But on the LT1 V8 cars, every one of them I've dealt with has had that. And I think it's just as easy to go out and buy the sensor to plug it off if you don't have one. It's kind of a weird shape on the inside. You can't just stick any kind of pipe thread plug in it. It's a weird deal. So with that covered, let's talk about this steam line. hooked it into the top of the radiator here, not the one next to the cap, but the one below it. And then you kind of got to reduce it down to fit the, let's see if it says, this says 1/4 inch. So I'm reducing it down from a, I want to say it's a 3/8 line, and down to a 1/4 inch. And the steam line, so there's the factory steam line, okay, and on the other side it goes into the throttle body. Now if you've left yours hooked up to the throttle body, that's fine. I take mine off. You can see that nipple right there. That's where you would hook this end up to if you've got it hooked up to the throttle body. If not, if you've taken it off the throttle body, and people take the line off the throttle body because it helps reduce the intake air temp through the throttle body. So it's hard to get a good picture of this. All right, so there, see it? Okay, that is the only outlet out of this steam line. And see, there's one clamp, there's the other clamp that hooks to the throttle body. I'll be taking that hose off and putting mine on it. So what's the purpose of that? It bleeds off the air trapped in the top of the cylinder heads. The early engines, like this one, had a line that come off of each corner. And if I had a set of cylinder heads here laying around, I'd show you. No, I don't have any. The air gets trapped in these things really, really bad. They're hard to get the air out of. The later engines just has a steam line going from the front of the heads. So what I do to help bleed it out is, as I'm filling it up, I will take this hose off. Here's where my vacuum pump comes in. I will hook this up to it and pull vacuum on that line to help pull the air out of the heads. I have pretty good luck with that. There's only one time where it didn't really work real well, but eventually the air comes out. But if you don't get it out, the engine overheats first time you drive it. So using the vacuum pump for like your brakes or whatever, it works. It works really well most of the time. So you will see, as you're using the vacuum pump, you'll look down the radiator and you'll see the coolant level start dropping. And so it allows you to keep putting fluid in it until you've just done as good a job as you can. And it's actually pulling coolant out of the head and into your vacuum pump canister. Then that's about as good as you can get it. Drive it, not very far, but drive it, come back, check it, let it cool off, check it again, and just keep filling it until you believe that you've got it all out. Like I said, these things are hard to get the air out of them. Some people even put the steam line and tap it back into the water pump right here. They'll drill a hole and tap it, put a nipple on it, and I'm assuming that works fine. I've never tried it. It would be a cleaner setup than what I've got. I've just got a hose zip tied to the upper hose, and it doesn't look real great, but that's it. The overflow tank. See if I remember how I did this. Alright, so obviously your overflow hooks here next to the cap and runs to your tank. Now the tank that I used, get these lines out of the way, is actually an F-body 93, 97 F-body factory overflow tank, and I just mounted it to the car, and it works. It works just fine. Almost looks factory in there, doesn't it? Like a factory battery mount, because that's where the battery is set in the F-bodies. It's got the factory dipstick. Wow. Let's put that back on. Pretend like we never seen that. So yeah, that was the deal with the overflow. Moving on, the wiring. Like I said, I'll cover that in another video. There's since so many different people use so many different ways to cool this. As far as a lot of people use a Ford Taurus fan. I don't know what years. I don't know if they're a dual fan deal or not. Here's the thing: the factory computer for these engines will run a fan. They weren't originally set up for a fan, but you can tune them, flash it to make it work with a electric fan. So the computer controls it. However, when you go to do that, you are moving wiring around in the back of the computer, back of the ECM, and if you're going into it that far, you might as well make a standalone harness. I've done a few of them, works great. This harness, since I was just showing people how to swap this, I'm trying to leave the harness untouched for the people that do not want to deal with wiring, and all they want to do is be able to shove this thing in and run. Okay, well, I've made this work. So to run the fans, obviously you can hook wiring straight to a fuse, straight to a toggle switch if you wanted. But I'm going to run this off of a temperature sensor because I don't want to have to think about it. I want to be able to just drive it and not worry about it. So I just ordered from Painless their dual relay kit. I don't remember the part number off the top of my head. I think it's a 30118. Not sure. Anyways, it will come with a temperature sensor that actually mounts to the, where you take this plug out of the back of the cylinder head here, right here. You'll take that plug out and put their sensor in place of it. So that will control their system. And then you don't have to mess with the back of the computer. You don't have to tune it. See, to be able to tune it, or to be able to do it, you have to use HP tuners or EFI Live, something like that. And then physically move wiring around. And if you don't have HP tuners or EFI Live, that's an extra $600 or $700, $800 expense. You can have the guy that tunes your computer do it for you. But the way that I'm going to do it, I will wire this to the car one time, and then I can use this harness the way it is without messing with it. And anytime that I melt this thing down, and I will, it seems like every year I put it through a nuclear meltdown, I can just shove another engine in this thing and run it. With the factory wiring, run it. The fan setup will be its own wiring job, and I won't have to keep rewiring these harnesses to do it. So the difference between a standalone and the factory harness, there is a big difference. Let me show you these are factory harnesses. What a mess, right? And then this, if I get it down, this is a standalone harness that I made last year. A lot of wiring comes out of it. But it's also, if you don't know what you're doing, it's a lot of work. And then you have to, tune the computer to make it work the way you want it. So I would rather just run this thing as it is without tapping into the back of the computer to make it work. So just keep that in mind. If you're doing a standalone, sure, wiring your fan wiring. If you're trying to run a factory harness, factory Chevy truck fuse block, where everything's just a plug and play deal, then I would do the Painless fan relay kit. And you can wire up relays yourself. I just wanted that extra temperature sensor that they give you that plugs right in the back of the head. Now that kit was $129, I think. Yeah, it's a lot of money, but at the same time, you're doing away with another headache. So, and then it stays on the car. You're not taking it in and out and modifying wiring harnesses all the time for your fans. So, now for the people that are running mechanical fans, this engine originally came with a mechanical fan that screwed onto the front of the water pump. My brother's truck, it's a 4.8 in a 74 GMC. He still uses the mechanical fan. Obviously, he has no problem with trying to run electric fans. He doesn't have an electric fan on the truck. That's one less thing he has to worry about. Worked out pretty good in his instance, but you know, the fans are kind of big, and I'm not saying you couldn't run one. Let's see. Slide her out of the way. Been in here eating Tide Pods. Okay, so this is the factory fan. Pretty good size fan. I probably could have ran it. I'm pretty sure I could have ran it on this car, and I wouldn't have had to worry about it. But I wanted that extra room up front. So, like I said, this is a Radiator from a 93 to 97 F-body LT1 car. Factory fans. When you run the painless kit, it comes with the correct plugins to plug right into this fan. So, yeah, that's it for the cooling system on this car. There's not going to be much to it. Now, the cooling on the radiator is going to be a different deal. I'm not really sure which transcooler I'm going to run yet, because I'm running a 4L80, and then these little coolers that you buy at a parts store, I didn't cut it. The transmission didn't like it, not one bit. So there you have it. If you got any questions, let me know.